Thanks for joining us here on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, today in one part of the country, the Punjab Chief Minister's son, Captain Amrinder Singh's son, Raninder Singh, appeared before the Enforcement Directorate. And he was questioned for about 6 hours. He was summoned several weeks ago. In fact, didn't turn up the first time we given to understand. Because there's an investigation going on in a 2016 case about alleged undisclosed assets and some money that was moved from here to Europe, which is under the investigation by Enforcement Directorate that largely looks into forex violations and money laundering. Not just that. On the other hand, in another state in our country, in Maharashtra, former Maharashtra Chief Minister Prithviraj Chavan got an income tax notice in connection with the poll affidavits that Chavan had submitted over the last many years. Now, the income tax has asked him to show documentations for the assets that he's declared in the last 10 years. And this is something that Prithviraj Chavan has confirmed. He also saying that such notices are sent to leaders of opposition parties. We never see any information of income tax notices being issued to the BJP leaders. I've been filing my returns regularly. BJP has a well-planned strategy on how to use power and for whom. BJP knows very well how to use its power. These are not the two only instances. Just a few days ago, Enforcement Directorate sources also told us that they had made considerable headway and progress and found the trail, the evidence trail in the Augusta VVIP chopper case, indicting Kamal Nath's sons and nephew. Now, this is what the ED sources are telling us. The official charge sheet with the names and the details of Kamal Nath's kin and yet to be filed. In another part of the country, and this is the fourth instance I'm telling you about, a Congress leader and ex-mayor of Bengaluru was arrested in a riots case. The charge from the Congress Party, as you may have guessed by now, is very simple. That investigative agencies across the country are being used for political vendetta, are being used to target the rivals of the BJP. BJP so far has simply stated that these are the people who've been involved in various cases of corruption, evasion, or even violence. This is genuine crackdown. So my simple question is, for cases that have gone on for several years, on what grounds is the Congress Party alleging that this is still political vendetta? And to the BJP, I have a simple question. When, in any of these cases, when will we, in any of these cases, or in the case of D.K. Shiv Kumar, in the case of P. Chidambaram, in the case of Robert Vadra or Huda, in any of these cases of Congress leaders, when will we see any closure and justice being done? Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Javed Ansari, senior journalist, with us this evening. Also Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist. ML Sharma, former CBI Special Director, with us this evening. Dr. Shama Mohammed, National Spokesperson for the Congress Party. And Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson for the BJP. Good to have all of you with us this evening. Mr. Javed Ansari, let me begin with you. Difficult to say, but is there merit to the charge really that the Congress Party is making, that all of this is just political vendetta?
Look, as a matter of principle, why should anybody, irrespective of which political party he or she belongs to, be insulated from investigation or be insulated from the reach of the law, whether it's the Congress, the BJP, or any other party? But having said that, just the fact, and like your report, I am also unaware of any such case where leaders belonging to the BJP or to those ideologically or their ideological affiliates have at any stage been hauled up. No. Why is it that it's only Mr. Sharad Pawar and Supriya Sule and Aditya Thackeray? I have not heard of a single BJP leader being hauled up, single BJP candidate being hauled up and asked to furnish documentation or evidence or proof for the election affidavits they filed. dating back as long back as 10 years. Even if they were asked to file last year's affidavit, I would be. So if the law is enforced on a selective basis, on depending on who the person is or what his or her political affiliation is, then it's certainly objectionable. If the law is applied uniformly, why would anybody then object to it? Or at least even if they do, they would have no basis. I mean, their objection would not stand.
Okay, let me ask Shama Mohammed.
Subjective application of law is
no, I agree with you. Subjective application is not acceptable at all. Either you give leeway to all or you give leeway to none. But Shama Mohammed, is this a case where leeway is only given to one side and not to the other?
I'm sorry, I missed you in the beginning. I don't know which case you're talking about.
All of them put together. So I've listed out a series of cases from Captain Amrinder's son to the Bengaluru ex-mayor being arrested, to the ED's investigation into Kamal Nath's relatives and especially nephew Ratul Puri. Also the latest that we've got an IT notice to Prithviraj Chavan, to the cases that haven't gone anywhere for DK Shivkumar and Mr. Chidambaram. The allegation from the Congress party is that this is all a vendetta. Mr. Javed Ansari says there is merit to saying that, well, we don't hear much about BJP guys being under the scanner. So is this a case of selective crackdown on what's, wrong, essentially?
No, I totally agree with Mr. Ansari on this, because I just want to know, they've been going after the Congress leaders from 2014. They had put Mr. Chidambaram in prison for 3 months, and judicial custody. And my question is, what have they got? Is there any evidence? Who are they convicted? Recently, what I heard was the only politician convicted for a coal scam was from the Bharatiya Janata Party when Mr. Vajpayee was in power, Mr. Dey. So where is the conviction, one? And number two, I want to know what has happened to the Reddy brothers. Once was their case closed? The CBI closed the Reddy brothers case, 12,000 crores of illegal mining across 4 states involving 9 ports. But it was closed in 2017, saying, what was the reason they closed it? They said the mining, the iron ore was from Karnataka, and we're investigating the export of that iron ore from the Goa port. But in the Goa port, the iron ore was mixed with the Goa iron ore. So we have to close it for technical reasons, because we were supposed to investigate only the iron ore come from Karnataka, which is exported from the Goa port. So they closed it in 2017 because 2018 the assembly elections were there. And the present Chief Minister Yediyurappa clearly said during the campaigning that I cannot do without the Reddy brothers. So why were they in Chennai? The case was going on. The Chennai CBI said we haven't got the go-ahead from the central government. Now, these are strong cases against the Reddy brothers. Then you have Mr. Amit Shah's son, who went from 50,000 to 80 crore in a year. What happened to that? Why is that not investigated? We had the Vyapam case, which suddenly everything collapsed. 40 murders done. Nobody knows what happened. Where is that gone? What about Rafael? That also in thin air. Where has this present government, where is their accountability in the present government? Where have they ordered a CBI probe like we have done during our time, including the Augusta Westlands, the so-called allegations they put across to us? Who is convicted from our government? That is the question I ask. Every time there are allegations, but the conviction, and also that the High Court of Uttarakhand has asked to probe the CM of Mr. Trivedi of Uttarakhand. It is not the Congress party. So all the right cases are against the Bharatiya Janata Party, but allegations are against the Congress. Let them prove it with evidence. You can't just put names and say we are going the ED. You know what happens when they want to divert, when there's a problem nationally, they want to divert. That's when they go after the Congress party leaders and their people. But where is the evidence?
So I'll come back to this point in just a bit, because I am very curious why there is an issue of timing being raised right now. Since I've right now cited multiple examples, I'll come back to this point that you raised. But let me get Mr. Gopal Agarwal to respond to what you're saying. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, where is the closure in any of these cases? And I will add to the list. What happened to the ED investigation against Sharad Pawar? and Supriya Sule, and Ajit Pawar.
Tanvi ji, we have to understand the issues. If you are talking about income tax notices, there are about 9 lakh notices which have gone out for to various people after the demonetization and various income tax violation that they consider. Income tax notice is just asking for an information. It has nothing more than that. Out of that 9 lakh, if you pick up 10 cases which are against Congress leader and then you say that income tax is only going against Congress leader, it is one thing. We also have received several notices. I myself have received, I'll say, share a copy of notice of income tax. So income tax notices are quite common. And why the Congress leaders think that they cannot be given notices out of this? Second thing is, if you look in from 2014, every case, why Congress government went out of power, why people rejected it, it was because of corruption. We alone did not talk about corruption. Corruption was talked about CAG, by the courts, coal block allocation. I can give you example, then you will say that you are going into history. The Congress from top leader, from Rahul Gandhi to Sonia Gandhi to Chidambaram to Kartik Chidambaram and to many DK Shiv Kumar, all have been involved in deep corruption in the country, and the people of India had rejected them mainly because they were involved into corruption. This is the second. The third point I would like to mention is Shama Mohammad's objection is why BJP leaders are not being questioned or given notices. That alone objection cannot justify that the Congress, if BJP is not being given, BJP leader is not being given notices, therefore Congress should not get, Congress leader should be just done away. So
No, I understand that that can't be the justification, but do you accept that there is selective action?
No, I told you 9 lakh notices are given from the income tax after demonetization.
So
and
how many
various,
BJP leaders got it?
So out of that, I do not have the data, but out of that you are picking about 10 or 9 or 10 on income tax. That is wrong. I have got the notice. I'll send you the copy. I have got 2-3 notices. I have to give information. Notice is simply, I am a chartered accountant. Notice is simply asking for information if you are not providing proper information.
Okay, fair enough, Mr. Agarwal, but what about the ED probes and the CBI probes as well?
For that point, I have told you that 2014, who is given notices, who is involved in corruption, those are in power. And the UPA government was deeply involved into corruption for all these 10 years. I can give you examples of. And it is not BJP is saying now. It is that time the court have put them on the blame. They were arrested. They were CAG has given so many reports, and I can just point out why they should not be investigated.
Okay.
If you to why you give us,
I take your point. I take your point. Corruption investigation can only be against those who were in power and had the scope to be corrupt.
Tanvi, just give me 10-20 seconds.
Yeah.
Shamaji told about Rafael. How many times investigation has done? Supreme Court has again cleared. Again, Rahul Gandhi start talking about Rafael. So, if A.K. Anthony himself says that the Department of Defense is deeply involved into corruption, and give us one example where BJP and dispensation, any leader is involved into corruption, and that is not the. And last point I would like to mention is those in power use several layering. Why there is a delay investigation? Why there is a low conviction? Because they are intelligent people. They are in power. They were using layering, and they were having Benami properties. All these acts were not there. Why for 27 years we did not have a Benami Property Act and notification which was passed 27 years because it was an organized crime by Chidambaram and Karti Chidambaram and Rahul Gandhi. What is there? He is on bail. Rahul Gandhi is on bail. What is there? Karti Chidambaram was in jail. Chidambaram was in jail. So what action has not?
No, that's exactly the point, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, that I'm making. That you arrested all of them, put them in behind bars, but the cases are not going anywhere. 2014 से 2020 खत्म होने को आया. Thankfully 2020 खत्म होने को आया. लेकिन जो है कोई भी अभी तक केस में closure नहीं हुआ. Okay, I will come back to you. I have more panelists I haven't gone to yet.
He's a lawyer.
Right.
He was the
Mr. Javed Ansari wanted to make a
Itna-
brief point.
aap
Let me bring him in. Mr.
Three,
Gopal
four,
Agarwal, I'll come back to you.
two-
Allow me to go to other panelists. I'll come back to you for sure. Yes, Mr.
My
Ansari.
brief submission is
Yeah.
there were two Telugu Desam MPs Raj Sabha MPs who were being investigated, raided by the ED during the course of the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. Subsequently, they joined the BJP. Nothing has been heard of those investigations. There was a Samajwadi MP, a real estate a builder from Uttar Pradesh, Raj Sabha MP. He was investigated, hauled up, made to sit overnight in the ED office. 3 days later, he joins the BJP. Nothing is heard of those cases. This is what I mean by selective action on the part of investigating agencies.
Okay, fair enough point. Mr. Javed Ansari, a point that you just now made. In fact, I was going to refer to it as well in some time. There's so many instances that I can also add, especially even TMC leaders who jumped the ship, went to the BJP, and all of those cases I think are in cold storage. Maybe some of them will come back around election time.
Can I come in, Tanvi?
Yeah, no. If you will both, the political representatives, if you will just allow me to go across to Gautam Mukherjee and then Mr. ML Sharma for their opening comments, and then I will come back to you. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, will it be right to say, would you agree with me if I say that there are obviously genuine, legitimate corruption cases across party lines? There will be, but unfortunately we never get to see closure in any of these cases because the probe agencies have been made political tools.
Well, partially there, it stands to reason that there'll be corruption cases across the board. But the fact is that the Congress Party in particular, and a number of the regional parties, which are like private limited companies, with Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, all holding important portfolios. These people are corrupt, at least in perception of the voting public, and that is why they find themselves completely or nearly out of power. Now, the big card that BJP has is that the Prime Minister and the Union Cabinet in these 6 years has been found blameless. Insofar as I'm sure any opposition party who's under the lash would love to catch hold of these guys and say, look, what are you pointing fingers at me? Look at you. But they haven't been able to, despite their best efforts. As far as convictions go, we have a notoriously, impossibly late Latif kind of judiciary. It takes 20, 30 years. It's easy to file a case, but quite another thing to actually get a verdict. As far as FIRs and so on go, yes, in many of these financial issues, the police are fairly incompetent because it takes a very specialized way of presenting evidence in order to get financial, criminal or civil cases to actually reach a conviction. But slackness or ineptitude on the part of the prosecuting agencies does not seem to hold water with the voting public. And the voting public is clear these people are corrupt. Now look at the National Herald case. It's going on and on and on. The victims will die, the prosecutors will die, and the case will not be solved.
So you're also saying this effectively. What we are also trying to say that the cases will go on, but the political benefits will be reaped for years together. Every time,
it happens on both sides of the fence.
It happens on both sides of the fence. Mr. ML Sharma is the expert who's seen it from the other side. Let me ask him for his view, Mr. Sharma. We have a list of instances, even during the UPS era, where the investigative agencies, including CBI, were used as tools to make somebody switch sides, make somebody switch their votes. Do you think it's still happening, and perhaps something that's beyond redemption?
Is one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that if there is a corruption case, it has to be investigated by the agencies of the day. Now, it has been mentioned before you, and I don't want to name any political party. Previous government, all kind of scams took place. Takes time for the scams to come out, and therefore, agencies naturally investigate these scams with a time lag. So, it is a natural process. As far as the present dispensation is concerned, I agree with Ms. Mukherjee that top level is very clean at the central level, but the state level, same party, the governments are not so clean. So when there's a changeover, then the scams in the present dispensation will also come out, and they will be also investigated by the agencies of the day. So I don't find anything unusual in this process. But I totally agree with you that process of investigation is slow, and trial process, the less we talk about it, the better. The reasons are far too many, but this debate is not about that. I'll not go into that. So this is how it is happening.
But is one of the reasons, Mr. Sharma, also that there are messaging, political messaging and political pressure that comes into play when you need to pick up pace, when you can put this in cold storage and focus on something else?
Frankly speaking, I'll be honest with you, I won't deny a bit of selectivity in the process, but it's not something new. It has always happened, because in the after the 60s, our politics has become very divisive, and when we have full-time politicians, they live off the land, and that makes the politics more divisive, and this is inevitable. So a little bit of selectivity in the process can't be denied, but those who are using selectivity, they will also face selectivity when other party takes over the governance. So this is an ongoing process.
Okay. Yes. Sharma Mohammed wanted to make a point. Let me take it back to her and then to Gopal.
Yeah, so a couple of points. Now, he said that Mr. Gopal Agarwal said that, this government is corrupt. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, you had 6 years, like she said. What did you do? And those were allegations. Now, let me come to one by one. Now, the difference, there were two other people here, the CBI, ex-CBI person and the journalist. What they said is, one government goes, the other government comes. The difference between our government and the present dispensation is, in the present dispensation, there's nothing called accountability. Nobody takes responsibility for the scams. Whereas in our government, what happened was we would order the CBI probe. The person over there, the in charge or the minister would step down and there would be a CBI probe, just like what happened in Augusta Westland, just like when Mr. Ashok Chavan, there were allegations against him, he stepped down. Mr. Ashwini Kumar stepped down. Now, he spoke about the scams. Now, we know very clearly what happened with the 3G so-called allegations, the 1.7 lakh crore or whatever, the presumptuous loss. That was not there. The Supreme Court monitored probe said there was no scam. So let us get it right. The other one was the coal scam. In that also the verdict has come out. None of the International Congress politicians or leaders were involved. It was bureaucrats who went behind bars. Now let's get everything straight now. So those people who are the CBI person as well as the journalist was very excited to say that this dispensation, there is nothing wrong on the top. I would like to ask them, what are electoral bonds? Are they not a big scam? What was demonetization? Was that not a big scam? Of course, when we come back to power, we will definitely investigate all these big scams. In ours, we can say that we stepped down, we told them to step down, and there's an investigation happening. Number two, very important point is, what about all those people, including Narayan Rane, including Mukul Roy, including Himanta Biswa Sarma, and also Sukram, the only Congress leader who was convicted. Which party is he right now? Which party did he join in 2017? He joined the Bharatiya Janata Party. So it is like Ganga. So when you have allegations before, you join the Bharatiya Janata Party, you take the dip in the Ganga, then you come out clean. Why does the investigation stop? Let them investigate each and everybody, the ED. Then he spoke about income tax. It is not income tax, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, it is the ED. Please, you're a chartered accountant, you should know the difference between the income tax notices and ED investigations. The ED they are sending into where most of our leaders. Do you understand that, Mr. Gopal Agarwal? I think you must read more before you come for a debate rather than coming and saying whatever you want. So these are the facts. The facts are that none of the Congress leaders have been convicted. You have been after them for the last 6 years, but nothing has been found, including you've been
I'm very
party
intrigued by one comment you made, Shama, when you said that when we come back to power, of course, we are going to be investigating them as well.
Investigating
So,
all these. Of course, we will start.
then
Definitely
that's when it will look like political vendetta again.
Vendetta. It has to be investigated. What are electoral bonds? It's a scam. It is a big scam. We all know that. Everything. Of course, we will investigate. Why should we not investigate what is not right? This is not vendetta. It is what has to be. How did Amit Shah's son get 50,000 to 80 crore in 1 year? Why has that not been investigated?
Okay.
Mr. Modi, come out and
But
say.
would you deny that the Congress party actually perfected the art of using these agencies timed, supremely well? December 2008 is one of the examples off the top of my mind where Mulayam Singh backed the nuclear deal and immediately the CBI cases against him were withdrawn right then. I remember cases that happened around 2012 where investigations were done against Mayawati's aide in the hope that they would be backing from Mayawati as well. And of course, everybody knows it's been quoted ad nauseum what the Supreme Court itself had to say about CBI being a caged parrot. So, would you admit that this is an art that you perfected?
No, I want to ask you in the same vein 2 questions. One, why was cases against Mukul Roy, Hemanta Biswa Sarma, Narayan Rane all dropped? One. Number 2, if we were that, when the Augusta Westland issue came out in Italy, it broke in Italy. It was in the Indian Express in 2012. The next day, Mr. A.K. Antony, the defense minister, said, we are stopping this contract. And in 2013, we ordered, when Giuseppe Orsi was arrested, along with Bruno Spagnoloni in Italy, we ordered a CBI probe. And after that, Mr. Antony said in Parliament, we are ready for a JPC. Do you understand? Which they were not ready in Rafale. We were ready for a JPC. But the ex-finance minister, Mr. Jaitley, he's no more, said, no, we do not want a JPC. So we are ready for everything. Now, when there was an issue, when it broke out, we are being transparent and ready for an investigation.
Okay.
What more do you want? This government, where have they ordered a CBI probe? Why? You should ask Mr. Gopal Agarwal, why did they close the Reddy brothers case when there are 12,000 crores over there? The diary of Mr. Yediyurappa, was there any investigation where he clearly said how he's paid Supreme Court judges, High Court judges, party leaders? It's all out there. Was there an investigation?
Let me ask him to answer. You've quoted several examples. I'm sure Mr. Gopal Agarwal wants to answer. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, had you not opposed the investigation in the JPC back when UPA was in power, perhaps even back then itself we would have found out what ED now alleges, that Ratal Puri got kickbacks along with Christian Michel in the Augusta Westland case.
Tanvi, there are 2-3 things we should all understand. In the corruption, what is the definition of corruption in the country law? It is when one person involved is in power. He is in a position to influence the decision making, then it is called, comes under corruption. So when Mr. Sharma tells that there is a time lag, therefore all the cases which were taken, decisions taken during the UPA 10 years, when they were in power, they are being investigated because there are serious allegations on that. At that time, BJP was not in power. And that time, any case of corruption cannot come on BJP leader that time. When we are out of power, if the Congress goes and finds out any corruption case, that's fine. We will also face the charges. That's one thing. Second thing is, when anybody asks what action we have taken, all coal block allocations, which were done in a partial manner to selectively certain companies. I can give you an example where coal blocks were allocated to companies which did not have anything to do with coal extraction. They did not have integration. No, let me.
You have to be clear. Who got convicted in the coal allocation?
I was not telling you. You were talking all shit. You were talking all shit.
What are the words he's using, Tanvi, on air?
No,
he said shit.
Tanvi.
Please, can you ask him to be careful?
You are talking shit now. Why are you interfering?
I was talking
I-
about.
Okay, okay, let's be civil about this, please. Let's be
When I
civil.
allowed you to
Let's be
talk,
civil and keep in mind
He asked
the discourse we are
I
having
allowed her
here.
to speak all the
May I
time.
just come in
I
here?
allowed her
Both
to
of you,
speak
please take a
all
deep
the-
breath.
all
This
that
is
rubbish
really
shit
not
she was
an
talking.
issue where you need to be yelling and abusing or using
So then why she
unacceptable
just-
language. It's an issue
Why-
that's
why
gone
she
on forever
talking?
in our country.
I allowed to talk. I allowed
Yeah,
her
okay.
to speak all the shit.
That's
what she
fine,
was
Mr.
talking.
Gopal Agarwal. You can always
So she
ask
should
her
not
to not
talk.
interrupt.
So she
I will
should
ask
be
Shama
quiet.
Mohammed to not
You
interrupt.
cannot use
Let's
words
keep it
like
civil
that,
though.
Mr. Gopal
Yes, can I
Agarwal.
just hear what
If
Gopal
we are-
Agarwal has to say?
The thing is, the corruption involvement of Congress leader is there on the card, on the court cases everywhere. They were in the power for 10 years. So every investigation of corruption will include if they are involved. That is the point that people are involved. On the coal block allocation, we have closed, removed them, and again it is an auction, transparent auction process that is taking place. Rafael, they talked about corruption. Everything was clarified to their satisfaction.
Please
But
go
if
and
the
read.
want to be satisfied, what can we do? And I agree with Mr. Mukherjee and other players that they have tried everything to put the senior leader or the central leadership or the cabinet. We have taken extra precaution that Prime Minister is very concerned that nobody should be involved in corruption because we came to the government on an anti-corruption plank. We promised to the people of the country at the national level. There may be cases on the state level, I don't know, but at the national level,
Okay,
there are no.
let me bring in our other
And-
panelists as well. I like one point that was made here by two panelists.
Ramram ji was
one
bail.
question.
Rahul Gandhi was on bail. Karti, so there is, and I told you that how difficult it is for pinpointing the white collar crimes. They
Can I
have
ask you
taken
one question?
for precautions.
Okay,
So
yes.
Can I ask him one question? Tanvi, just one question. Can I ask him?
Yeah.
He said that Prime Minister said there should be no corruption. Why are you not asking? Why are you not asking Uttarakhand CM to resign? There is a CBI investigation against him. No. Why is the Prime Minister? Why is the Prime Minister not asking the Uttarakhand CM to resign? He's not answering my question. Why is the Prime Minister not asking Mr. Trivedi to resign? There is a High Court has asked the CBI probe over. He should resign. He should step down. When
You
there's an
asked Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi to resign from the post and
But
apologize.
they don't hold a constitutional post.
He's a
Gandhi
constitutional.
Foundation has taken for his
But Rahul Gandhi
Rajiv
holds no post. He's not even the party
Rajiv
president
Gandhi
anymore.
Foundation-
What will he
Rajiv
resign
Gandhi
from?
Foundation has taken-
Arey, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, Rahul Gandhi has already
taken
resigned.
money from the National Prime Minister Disaster Fund, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. How can they take it?
Okay.
from that?
Okay. May I just come in here? May I just come in here? Point well made by both the political parties. One interesting point, aspect that was raised, and I think Gautam Mukherjee also spoke about it, Mr. Javed Ansari. Fact of the matter also is that there are cases which are legitimate, or perhaps the people at least buy into this whole narrative that these are cases of corruption. People believe that these are corrupt people who must be punished, and that's what's essentially at the end of the day required. Now, where that case goes for years together, it can just keep on going. The government doesn't care, neither do the agencies. Perhaps the next time the government wants to send a notice or summon or interrogate anybody will be during election time. That's essentially what it has come down to.
Tanvi, I beg to differ with you. It doesn't matter what the people think. People think popular will has no locus standi before law. It's what the law believes in and what the agencies find. It has to be on the basis of evidence. The people may think that I am very fair, or the people may think that Shama Mohammed is not that fair. It doesn't matter. Why are the agencies turning a blind eye to cases against Mr. Biswa Sarma? They were being probed when they were in the Congress. Now those cases have gone cold ever since they've joined the BJP. Cases against Mukul Roy, cases against the Samajwadi Party MP who has now joined the BJP are in the Rajya Sabha. Two Telugu Desam MPs who've now joined the BJP in the Rajya Sabha. What has happened to them? this I don't buy. I think this argument has no locus standi, that the people think them to be fair, and the people, if popular will, if popular perception is has to decide things, then what is the point of having the judiciary then? So this is a bogus argument, in my view.
Okay, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, would you want to come in?
Yeah, look, I understand what Javed Ansari is saying. He's got a very valid point. But if you look at the reality is that the judiciary is, one, hugely overburdened. Two, the finer points of the law are perfectly all right. But in the process, it's like saying the municipality is responsible for keeping the city clean. So why are there mountains of garbage? Mountains of garbage. It is because it doesn't work. The judiciary, so when you talk of locus standi and fine little Latin phrase like that, yeah, fine. In principle, I agree. But in fact, the de facto situation is the judiciary is unable to cope, and the prosecuting agencies and the defense are out of their depth. You need specialization to cope with financial skullduggery in particular, and that has to be introduced. It's just like forensics were introduced, and that's where criminal murders and things, DNA and so forth came in, and it gets much easier than saying, this or that. So similarly, in financial cases, there is a specialized method. Maybe you need a lot of chartered accountants and so on to assist the police.
Okay.
Until then, you're not going to get convictions, but that does not let the corrupt off the hook. And popular perception is king. They vote based on who they think is a crook and who isn't, who is helping them and who is not. This can't be wished away.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. M.L. Sharma then. Mr. M.L. Sharma, if you can shed more light on this, how big a challenge is the fact that the probe agencies, and including our premier agency CBI, are overburdened? There is inordinate judicial delay for several other reasons, which also becomes a huge factor even in these cases. Or if there is a will, do you believe these cases can be fast-tracked and justice can be done?
You have raised 2 points. One is about investigation.
Yeah.
And second is about adjudication.
Yes.
So they are separate and distinct. As far as investigation is concerned, it's well known that CBI is an overburdened agency, and therefore delay takes place. Sometimes delay is also occasioned by political reasons. I don't certainly support this, but the workload of the agency has to be brought down. When things go wrong, you see earlier, British days, if the local police couldn't handle a case, the state CID crime branch would handle the matter. But now, people, even the local governments, have increasingly lost faith in the crime branch, and therefore everything gets to the door of the CBI. So CBI is not in a position to cope with this heavy workload, and then entrustment of cases by the constitutional courts in their writ jurisdiction, High Court, Supreme Court, that workload is also quite heavy. I worked in the CBI, various capacity, 20 years. I know, very heavy workload. So one way of doing it is that, you see, NIA, anti-terror cases, like I was in the CBI, investigated so many terror cases, hijackings and assassinations, all that. That has been taken out of CBI. It has gone to the NIA. So likewise, this conventional crime, we call it special crime, murders and rapes and this and that. For that, the government of India should think of creating a new agency so that CBI is left only with corruption cases. This is one way of reducing workload. Second is, the constitutional courts also should take pity on the agency. They should not impose too many cases on it because that results in deterioration of the quality. Third, the investigative strength of the CBI also needs to be augmented. CBI is a big name, but I know it for certain there are not more than 500 to 550 investigators. Rest is all supporting staff. Supervisory staff may be a little too much, but the working hands, the investigating hands, are fewer, and therefore this needs to be augmented. This is my remedy for this. As far as trial process is concerned, we all know, but I need to repeat it, workload is heavy. There's no doubt about it. Second, there's inadequacy of the courts. In a vast country like India, where 3 crore cases are pending at the trial level, we have only 17 to 18,000 courts for civil and criminal matters put together. Now, frankly speaking, this number needs to be increased to, in a gradual manner, about 80,000. This is my remedy for it. I have thought about it, and therefore I say it with some kind of responsibility and authority. And third, attitude of the courts. Now I talk to the judges, academies and they lectures and all. The feedback that I get, and I'm very sorry to say that, I've worked for criminal justice system for almost 45 years, and I have a lot of respect. But I have to say this in this kind of debate, that the judges at all levels take it for granted that pendency will remain. In other words, what I'm saying is the urge to dispose because of overbearing lawyers, particularly big lawyers, and rural areas, district judge works well. But when it comes to Delhi and other places where we have influential lawyers and others, they don't allow them to go that way.
Right.
They seem to have given up. So therefore, the psychological change also has to come about. Apart from numbers, they need to be in a driver's seat, which, in my view, in bigger towns, the judicial officers are not. These are the ways. Now, delays are bad. The delays are bad at investigation. Delays are equally bad at adjudication level. Something needs to be done about it. Take, for example, Supreme Court's order to all high courts that you constitute special courts to dispose of cases pending against politicians. That number is about 4,400 something. Now, look and behold, the Madras High Court says that the Supreme Court order is not as per law because these cases don't constitute a class in themselves, and therefore won't do. All kind of things take place.
No, I agree with you, and those are larger parts of our investigation and judicial system that must be probed. These problems actually, like you very rightly said, with the big and the powerful lawyers also coming into play, there's a lot of public scrutiny, there's a lot of political pressure. It just adds to the entire delay system. And yes, I will also say this, when it comes to complicated economic crimes, some of our probe officials aren't even trained or equipped enough to handle these complicated entire web that's laid out there, which is why we see a lot of ED probes also struggling and taking time to be solved. Two panelists wanted to make a point, first to Gopal and then Shama Mohammed. Yes.
You are talking about political vendetta. When our president, Amit Shah, was for 3 years turned out of from the Gujarat, and even the Prime Minister was harassed so much that he had to undergo 9 hours. That time, the Chief Minister, 9 hours of investigation. Then what we talk about, what was saffron terror, ma'am? It was all about the thing which everybody think is coming out. It was to harass RSS and BJP leaders. So this is the issue, and yeah, that's what I wanted to mention.
Yeah, so I will reply to you. In case of Mr. Amit Shah, it didn't come from the center. It's a district magistrate first which said that it was a fake encounter. Then the High Court of Gujarat. Wait, listen to me. The High Court of Gujarat asked for CBI probe. It was not the center which sent the CBI probe. Now you listen to me.
Prime Minister is not giving instruction to ED now to investigate.
You talked about Amit Shah, so I replied. Now, one very important point, since the CBI person is also here. In our time, when UPA was in power, no coup happened in the CBI. At midnight, they chucked out Mr. Alok Verma, put in Nageshwar Rao, stopped the investigations against Mr. Astana, who were all those officers who were investigating Mr. Astana were removed in that time, and then they put in Mr. Nageshwar Rao. I have never heard of that in our time. Nothing like this was happening. A CBI person is sitting here. He should comment on this midnight coup. How dare they do it? Because, of course, Mr. Alok Verma was coming out with very important papers regarding the Rafale deal. So they just did a midnight coup. How dare they do it? And to top it all, they stopped the investigation against Mr. Asthana. Those who were investigating were pulled away from that. Why should they do that? Let them investigate. So if they are not able to investigate an officer like Mr. Asthana, who has been completely promoted by Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah from Gujarat to now, we know what is happening in this. Who is the head of ED right now? We know what
Mr.
is happening.
Asthana has gone on to two extremely important, crucial postings since he was pushed out of the CBI. He's also been given a clean chit. I'm just informing our viewers of the status without commenting on it. I am out of time, but very quickly, Mr. Gopal Agarwal can respond.
No, the thing is that what was this saffron terror, whole sham by Chidambaram and other thing?
Where are we going?
Where are you going? Where are you going about this? Then we
Rafael,
Mr. Gopal Agarwal, if you bring about that conversation, we will have to do another 1 hour debate just on that, case by case, U-turns by various agencies, Congress or the BJP, and the frustration of our judiciary.
What is step taken against Mrs. Pragya Thakur? Can you answer that?
The Supreme Court talked about that. No, the thing is that they are deeply involved, and that is all the layers are coming out.
Okay.
That are being investigated.
All right, I think we have run out of time, so I'm going to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you so much to all 5 of you for joining us. Viewers, I think it's very clear. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that often, and I'm not going to talk about any specific case, that often, very, very often, our probe agencies, from the state to the central ones, are used for political purposes. Often the cases that they are probing are legitimate. There is a legitimate cause for investigation and action, but it is only picked up, it is only investigated, it is only fast-tracked or put in cold storage basis the political need for that case and the outcome of that case. Sometimes the outcome changes. Not once, twice, thrice, depending on how many times the political parties come and go during the lifetime of that case. All of this has happened in our country to the point where it's just become another normal thing. So yes, the Congress Party is going to claim that this is political vendetta, but then who else knows it better than the Congress Party how to use these investigative agencies for political vendetta or to use these investigative agencies as tools. One can only hope that in this political fight, in this political war, at least in few of the cases, there is some justice done. At least some of our corrupt netas are made to pay for destroying our system. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.